Welcome to Mystery Haven. Settle in, my dear listeners, for a tale woven in the grand style of Agatha Christie, featuring the meticulous Hercule Poirot. This is a classic locked-room mystery set in the opulent Celeste Hotel, a glittering gem in 1920s London. Before we begin, tell me in the comments where you're listening from. Your cozy armchair by the fire, or perhaps a bustling cafe. Let's unravel the secrets of the Celeste together with a warm cup of tea and a sharp mind. Now let's step into the story. Chapter 1. The Grand Celeste Hotel. The Celeste Hotel stood as a monument to elegance in the heart of London, its facade a symphony of white stone and arched windows that caught the evening light like a prism. Inside, marble floors gleamed beneath chandeliers that dripped with crystal, casting a soft glow over velvet drapes and gilded mirrors. The air hummed with the clink of champagne flutes and the murmur of cultured voices. Aristocrats, industrialists, and artists mingling in a delicate dance of ambition and charm. It was the autumn of 1925, and the Celeste was the place to be seen, a former Georgian manor transformed into a haven for the elite. Hercule Poirot, the renowned Belgian detective, arrived at the Celeste for a rare weekend of respite. His friend, Captain Arthur Hastings, had insisted on the getaway, waxing poetic about the hotel's dining room, which he called a culinary revelation worthy of your refined palate, Poirot. Poirot, ever meticulous, adjusted his perfectly knotted bow tie and smoothed his mustache, his sharp gray eyes scanning the lobby. He was not one for idle vacations, but Hastings' enthusiasm had persuaded him. "Mon ami," Poirot had said, "if the Celeste's cuisine is as splendid as you claim, perhaps I shall forgive this interruption of my routine." The lobby buzzed with activity. Porters glided silently, carrying leather suitcases, while a string quartet played softly in the corner. Poirot noted the guests, each a character in this unfolding drama. Lady Beatrice Langley, a dowager with a spine of steel and a tongue sharper than her diamond-encrusted cane, held court near the grand staircase. Her emerald gown shimmered, but her eyes were cold, fixed on a man across the room. That man was Mr. Victor Crane, a brash industrialist whose booming laugh grated on Poirot's nerves. Crane's tailored suit could not hide his rough edges, hands calloused from his early days in the coal mines, now softened by wealth but not by manners. Nearby, Miss Clara Duval, a French actress of striking beauty, sipped a martini, her auburn hair catching the light like a flame. Her laughter was practiced, her glances calculated, yet something in her posture suggested a guarded heart. Dr. Harold Mortimer, a physician with a gaunt face and restless hands, sat alone at a corner table, scribbling in a leather-bound notebook. His tweed suit was impeccable, but his eyes darted nervously as if expecting an unwelcome visitor. Finally, Mr. Reginald Blake, the Celeste's young manager, moved through the crowd with a forced smile. His boyish charm belied an ambition that seemed to strain against the confines of his role. Poirot settled into a plush armchair, a glass of crème de menthe in hand, and observed. Hastings, ever the social butterfly, struck up a conversation with a waiter named Thomas, who shared the hotel's history. "Used to be the Langley family manor, sir," Thomas said, polishing a glass. "Lady Beatrice sold it 10 years ago after her husband's death. They say she still treats it like her own." Hastings nodded, glancing at Poirot. "Fascinating, isn't it? A house with such stories." Poirot merely raised an eyebrow. "Every house has stories, Hastings. The question is, which ones matter?" As the evening progressed, Poirot's keen senses detected undercurrents of tension. At the dining room, where silver clinked against fine china, Lady Beatrice and Victor Crane exchanged barbed words over a shared history. "You dare speak of integrity, Mr. Crane?" Beatrice snapped, her voice carrying. "After what you did to my husband's mining venture?" Crane smirked, unperturbed. "Business is business, Lady Beatrice. Your husband should have read the fine print." The table fell silent, and Poirot noted Beatrice's clenched fist, her rings glinting like daggers. Across the room, Clara Duval leaned close to Reginald Blake, her hand brushing his as she laughed at some private jest. Blake flushed, his eyes flickering between pride and unease. Was it flirtation or manipulation? Poirot wondered. Dr. Mortimer, meanwhile, excused himself early, clutching his notebook as he slipped into the corridor. Hastings, oblivious to the drama, raved about the roast pheasant. "Poirot, you must admit this is divine." Poirot smiled thinly. "The food is adequate, Hastings, but the company, that is what intrigues me." Later, as guests drifted to the lounge for after-dinner drinks, Poirot overheard fragments of conversation. A maid, Mary, whispered to Thomas about Crane's rudeness. "He snapped at me for a speck of dust on his door, as if I don't work hard enough." Thomas shushed her, glancing at Blake, who was nearby, adjusting a vase with nervous precision. The hotel's grandeur masked a web of grievances, Poirot realized, grievances that could fester into something darker. He retired to his suite on the third floor, a tasteful room with mahogany furniture and a view of London's twinkling skyline. As he prepared for bed, he reflected on the Celeste's guests. Lady Beatrice's wealth and pride made her formidable, but her anger at Crane suggested a deeper wound. Crane's arrogance and shady dealings hinted at enemies aplenty. Clara's charm was a mask, but for what? Mortimer's secretive scribbling and Blake's anxious ambition were pieces of a puzzle Poirot could not yet assemble. Even the staff, Mary, Thomas, seemed caught in the hotel's invisible currents. Before turning out the light, Poirot opened his notebook, a habit as ingrained as his mustache twirling. He jotted down names, impressions, and questions. Why had Beatrice sold the manor? What drove Crane's relentless ambition? Was Clara's allure a weapon? And what precisely was Dr. Mortimer hiding? The Celeste, for all its splendor, felt like a stage set for a tragedy. Poirot closed his notebook, his mind already spinning with possibilities. "The little gray cells," he murmured. "They sense a storm approaching." As he drifted to sleep, the hotel's walls seemed to hum with secrets, waiting for the morning to reveal them, or conceal them further. Little did Poirot know the Celeste was about to become the scene of an impossible crime, one that would test even his formidable intellect. Chapter 2. The Corpse in Room 312. The Celeste Hotel slumbered under the soft glow of dawn, its opulent corridors hushed save for the faint clatter of breakfast trays. It was just past 6 a.m. when a piercing scream shattered the tranquility, echoing from the third floor. Hercule Poirot, roused from his meticulous morning routine of combing his mustache, paused mid-brush. The scream was not one of mere surprise. It carried the raw edge of horror. He slipped into his dressing gown, his gray eyes narrowing with instinct, and stepped into the corridor. The source of the commotion was room 312, the suite of Mr. Victor Crane, the brash industrialist Poirot had observed the previous evening. A small crowd had gathered. Mary, the young maid, her face pale as chalk, stood trembling outside the door. Reginald Blake, the hotel manager, fumbled with a master key, and Captain Hastings, bleary-eyed in his pajamas, hurried to Poirot's side. "Good heavens, Poirot, what's happened?" Hastings asked, his voice thick with sleep. Mary, wringing her hands, stammered, I went to deliver the morning paper, sir, and... Oh, it's dreadful." Blake, his youthful face strained, finally unlocked the door, but it refused to budge. "The bolt's engaged from the inside," he muttered, his voice betraying a flicker of panic. Poirot, calm as ever, raised a hand. "Patience, Monsieur Blake, we shall see what lies within." With a coordinated push, Blake and a porter forced the door, snapping the bolt with a splintering crack. Inside, Victor Crane lay sprawled on the Persian rug, his lifeless eyes staring at the ceiling. A single stab wound pierced his chest, blood pooling beneath him in a grim halo. Beside his hand lay a silver letter opener, its blade stained crimson. The room was pristine otherwise, no signs of struggle, no overturned furniture. The windows were sealed, their latches untouched, and the door's bolt, now broken, had been firmly in place. No key was found in the room. Poirot's mustache twitched as he absorbed the scene. "Mon Dieu," he murmured. "A locked-room murder. Most intriguing." Inspector Japp arrived within the hour, his mustache as frazzled as his mood. "A devil of a case, Poirot," he grumbled, surveying the scene. "Door bolted, windows locked, and not a soul seen entering or leaving after Crane retired at 11 p.m. last night. How's a man murdered in a sealed room?" Poirot knelt beside the body, his gloved hands careful not to disturb the evidence. Crane's pocket watch, stopped at 2:15 a.m., glinted in the morning light. His wallet was missing and the letter opener bore no fingerprints. Wiped clean, Poirot noted. A half-burned cigar rested in an ashtray on the bedside table, its acrid scent lingering. "Curious," Poirot said. "Monsieur Crane did not smoke, according to Hastings' chatter with the staff." Hastings, hovering anxiously, ventured a theory. Perhaps he invited someone in, and they locked the door after? Poirot shook his head. "Non, mon ami. The bolt requires a hand inside to engage it, and yet the killer has vanished like a phantom." Japp's men searched the room, confirming the ventilation shaft was too narrow for a person, and the fireplace flue was blocked. Poirot's little gray cells were already at work, piecing together the impossible. Japp summoned the key suspects to the hotel's private parlor. Lady Beatrice Langley swept in, her emerald gown replaced by a severe black dress, her expression one of disdain. "This is outrageous," she declared. "I was asleep in my suite, as any respectable lady would be." Miss Clara Duval, her eyes red-rimmed but her poise intact, claimed she'd spent the night rehearsing lines alone in her room. Dr. Harold Mortimer, clutching his notebook, admitted to a late-night walk in the hotel's garden, citing insomnia. Reginald Blake said he was in his office until 2 a.m., reviewing ledgers. Mary, still shaken, swore she'd been cleaning the lower floors, far from room 312. Poirot listened, his eyes darting from one face to another. Each alibi was plausible, yet he sensed fissures in their stories. Lady Beatrice's composure seemed too rigid, as if masking anger. Clara's tears felt performative, her hands twisting a lace handkerchief. Mortimer's nervous fidgeting betrayed more than insomnia. Blake's earnestness rang hollow, his eyes avoiding Poirot's gaze. Even Mary's timidity seemed exaggerated, her glances darting toward Blake. "Everyone has a reason to be truthful," Poirot murmured to Hastings, "and everyone has a reason to lie." He returned to room 312, Japp trailing behind. The letter opener was monogrammed with the Celeste's crest, a standard amenity in every suite. Poirot examined the windows again, noting a faint scratch on one latch, barely visible. Not deep enough for forced entry, he mused, but perhaps a clue. Under the bed, he found a torn scrap of paper with the word midnight scrawled in ink. He held it to the light, noting its jagged edge, as if ripped from a larger note. The cigar puzzled him most. Its brand, Havana Gold, was sold in the hotel bar, but Crane's aversion to tobacco suggested a visitor. Japp, growing impatient, pressed Poirot. "Any theories, old chap? This locked-room business is giving me a headache." Poirot smiled enigmatically. "The headache, Inspector, comes from looking without seeing. The room is locked, yes, but the truth is not. We must ask, why this method? Why the letter opener? And why the cigar?" He requested the hotel's blueprints and staff schedules, suspecting the answer lay in the Celeste's hidden corners. As the morning wore on, whispers spread among the guests. Lady Beatrice's feud with Crane was no secret. Her late husband's financial ruin at Crane's hands had left her bitter. Clara's rejection of Crane's advances, overheard by a waiter, suggested a personal motive. Dr. Mortimer's medical career, Hastings learned, had been tarnished by a scandal Crane threatened to expose. Blake, under pressure to sell the Celeste to Crane's consortium, had reason to resent him. Even Mary, humiliated by Crane's harsh words, might harbor a quiet rage. Poirot, sipping a tisane in the parlor, catalogued these motives in his notebook. Hastings, ever eager, speculated wildly. What if Crane staged it himself? A suicide to frame someone? Poirot chuckled. Hastings, your imagination is boundless, but the angle of the wound, upward, precise, requires another hand. No, this is murder and the killer is clever. They wish us to see an impossible crime, but Poirot sees only logic waiting to be uncovered. He closed his notebook, his mind alight with possibilities. The Celeste's grandeur now felt oppressive, its walls holding secrets too heavy for their elegance. As Poirot prepared to interview the suspects, he sensed the puzzle's complexity growing. The locked room was not just a physical barrier. It was a challenge to his intellect, a taunt from a killer who believed themselves untouchable. "We shall see," Poirot murmured, "who underestimates the little gray cells." Chapter 3. The investigation begins. The Celeste Hotel's elegance felt stifled by the morning's grim discovery. The police cordoned off room 312 and Inspector Japp's men bustled through the corridors, their heavy steps clashing with the hotel's refined ambiance. Hercule Poirot, impeccably dressed despite the early hour, stood in the private parlor where the suspects had been summoned. His gray eyes gleamed with purpose, his mustache perfectly symmetrical. Captain Hastings hovered nearby, scribbling notes with the enthusiasm of a schoolboy. "This is a proper puzzle, Poirot," Hastings said. "A locked room, a missing wallet, and that blasted cigar. What does it all mean?" Poirot's lips curved slightly. "It means, mon ami, that we must listen, observe, and think. The truth hides in the details." Poirot began his interviews, each suspect ushered in under Japp's watchful eye. First was Lady Beatrice Langley, her posture rigid as she sat, her black dress absorbing the parlor's light. Her diamond-encrusted cane rested against her chair, a silent testament to her wealth. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, her voice sharp, "this is a distasteful affair. I was asleep in my suite as I told the inspector. I had no reason to visit that odious man." Poirot tilted his head. "And yet, madame, you argued with Monsieur Crane last night. A matter of a mining venture, non?" Beatrice's eyes narrowed. "He swindled my late husband out of 20,000. I despised him, yes, but murder? Absurd. I am a lady, not a brute." Poirot noted her clenched hands, the faint tremor betraying her composure. Next came Miss Clara Duval, the French actress, her auburn hair pinned elegantly, though her eyes were shadowed with fatigue. She sank into the chair with theatrical grace, her voice soft but deliberate. "I was in my room, Monsieur Poirot, rehearsing my lines until well past midnight. Victor Crane was persistent, yes, but I refused his advances." Poirot raised an eyebrow. "Advances, mademoiselle? Of what nature?" Clara hesitated, then admitted Crane had offered to fund her next film in exchange for companionship. She claimed to have rebuffed him sharply at dinner. "I am no one's pawn," she said, her chin lifting defiantly. Poirot observed her calculated poise. Truth or a performance? Dr. Harold Mortimer entered next, his gaunt face paler than before, his fingers twitching around his leather-bound notebook. "I couldn't sleep," he said, his voice low. "I walked in the garden until nearly 2 a.m. The air clears the mind." Poirot leaned forward. And what troubles your mind, Doctor? Perhaps a secret Monsieur Crane knew. Mortimer flinched. He threatened to expose a mistake from my past. A patient years ago died under my care. An accident, but Crane twisted it into scandal. His eyes darted to the notebook, and Poirot made a mental note to investigate its contents. Reginald Blake, the hotel manager, was visibly nervous, his boyish charm fraying under scrutiny. I was in my office working on accounts until 2 a.m., he said, wiping sweat from his brow. The Celeste is in debt, and Crane was pressuring me to sell to his consortium. I refused, but I didn't kill him. Poirot's gaze was piercing. Pressure, Monsieur Blake, can make men desperate. Did you meet Crane last night? Blake shook his head vehemently, but his eyes flickered toward the door as if longing to escape. Finally, Mary, the maid, entered, her hands twisting in her apron. I was cleaning the lower floors, sir, like I told Mr. Blake. I didn't go near room 312 after delivering Mr. Crane's tea at 9 p.m. Poirot noted her timid demeanor, but her glance at Blake suggested loyalty or fear. And Monsieur Crane, he was unkind to you, non? Poirot asked gently. Mary nodded, her voice barely a whisper. He shouted at me for a smudge on his door, but I'd never hurt anyone. Poirot smiled reassuringly, but his mind catalogued her access to the hotel's keys. With interviews concluded, Poirot returned to room 312, Jap grumbling at his side. These alibis are flimsier than a house of cards, Poirot. But how did the killer get in and out? Poirot knelt by the window, re-examining the faint scratch on the latch. It was superficial, likely unrelated to entry, but he filed it away. The ventilation shaft, he confirmed, was too narrow even for a child. The fireplace flue was sealed, its damper rusted shut. The midnight note under the bed intrigued him most. He held it up, noting its fine paper torn from a larger sheet. A meeting, perhaps, he mused, or a distraction. The cigar in the ashtray was another anomaly. Hastings, who'd questioned the barman, confirmed Crane never smoked, yet the Havana Gold was a popular choice among guests. Perhaps the killer left it, Hastings suggested. Poirot nodded slowly. Or it was placed to mislead. We must know who smokes this brand. He examined the letter opener again, its celeste crest gleaming. A weapon of convenience, he said, but chosen with intent. Why not a knife? Why not a gun? Poirot requested the hotel's blueprints, suspecting hidden passages from its days as a manor. Blake provided them reluctantly, revealing a service corridor behind room 312's wardrobe. But its access was locked, and the key was in Blake's office. No one used it, Blake insisted. Poirot's eyes gleamed. No one you know of, monsieur. He also requested staff schedules, noting Mary's access to master keys, though none fit room 3112's unique bolt. As Poirot paced the room, Hastings ventured another theory. What if the killer climbed in from the roof? Poirot shook his head. The windows are sealed, Hastings, and the roof is 4 stories up. Non, the answer is simpler, yet more cunning. He paused by the wardrobe, running his fingers along its edge. A faint click revealed a hidden panel barely wide enough for a slender figure. Voila, he said softly. A secret, but does it lead to the truth? Jap, growing impatient, pressed for answers. You're seeing things I don't, Poirot. Give me something solid. Poirot smiled enigmatically. Solidity comes from understanding, Inspector. Each suspect has a motive. Greed, shame, ambition, rejection. But the method, that is the key. The locked room is a puzzle, not a miracle. He tucked the midnight note into his pocket, his mind racing. The Celeste's guests, now confined to their suites, whispered of scandal. Poirot overheard a porter mention Crane's reputation for blackmail, which aligned with Mortimer's confession. Clara's rejection of Crane, witnessed by a waiter, hinted at a personal grudge. Beatrice's financial ruin at Crane's hands was common knowledge, and Blake's debt gave him reason to fear Crane's influence. Even Mary, though timid, might have snapped under humiliation. Poirot's notebook filled with observations, each suspect a thread in a tangled web. As the afternoon sun cast long shadows, Poirot sat in the parlor, sipping a tisane. "The killer is among us," he told Hastings, "but they believe themselves invisible. The cigar, the note, the missing wallet, these are pieces of a deliberate design. We must look beyond the obvious." Hastings, ever optimistic, clapped his shoulder. "You'll crack it, Poirot, you always do." Poirot's mustache twitched. But first we must see what the Celeste hides in its shadows." Chapter 4. Clues and Red Herrings. The Celeste Hotel's grandeur seemed to mock the grim investigation unfolding within its walls. By mid-afternoon, the police had sealed room 312, but the air buzzed with unease as guests whispered in the lounge and staff darted nervous glances. Hercule Poirot, his suit immaculate and his mustache pristine, stood in the hotel's private parlor, his gray eyes scanning the blueprints spread before him. Captain Hastings hovered at his side, fidgeting with his notebook. "It's a labyrinth, Poirot," Hastings said, tracing the service corridor on the map. "But how does it help us crack this locked room business?" Poirot's lips curved. "Patience, mon ami. The labyrinth reveals its secrets to those who observe with care." Poirot's investigation deepened as he pursued the tantalizing clues from room 312. The midnight note, the Havana gold cigar, the missing wallet, and the faint scratch on the window latch. He began with the suspects' alibis, testing their cracks. A bellboy, Tom, approached Poirot with a hesitant whisper. "I saw Miss Duval near room 312 around midnight, sir. She was carrying an ice bucket, but she looked furtive." Poirot's eyes gleamed. He confronted Clara Duval in her suite, where she sat applying makeup with practiced calm. "Mademoiselle, you claim to be rehearsing lines, yet you were seen near Monsieur Crane's room. Explain." Clara's smile was brittle. "I needed ice for my complexion. The bucket was in the corridor." Poirot glanced at her table, where a silver bucket held melted ice. "Convenient," he said softly, noting her steady gaze. "A truth or a clever red herring?" Next, Poirot revisited the garden where Dr. Harold Mortimer claimed to have walked. There, near a rose bush, he found a diamond brooch, its clasp broken. It matched Lady Beatrice Langley's description of a piece stolen from her suite. "Curieux," Poirot murmured, holding it to the light. He summoned Beatrice, who clutched her cane tightly. "That's mine," she snapped. "Stolen 2 nights ago. That doctor was in the garden. Perhaps he took it." Poirot's mustache twitched. The brooch's placement seemed too perfect, as if dropped to incriminate Mortimer. Was Beatrice deflecting suspicion, or was she a victim of theft? Dr. Mortimer, summoned next, grew paler at the sight of the brooch. "I swear I never saw it," he stammered, clutching his notebook. Poirot pressed further, asking about the notebook's contents. Mortimer admitted it contained chemical formulas for a sedative, not medical notes. "I experiment in my spare time," he said, his voice unsteady. "Nothing sinister." Poirot's eyes narrowed. A sedative could explain Crane's lack of struggle, but Mortimer's alibi held. No one had seen him near room 312. The notebook, however, remained a question mark, its pages a potential clue or distraction. Reginald Blake, the hotel manager, was next. Poirot visited his office, where ledgers lay open, revealing the Celeste's crippling debt. "Monsieur Crane wished to buy the hotel, non?" Poirot asked. Blake nodded, his hands trembling. "He offered a fortune, but it would have meant handing the Celeste to his consortium. I couldn't let that happen." Poirot noticed a box of Havana gold cigars on Blake's desk, matching the one in Crane's room. "You smoke, Monsieur Blake?" Blake flushed. Occasionally, but I wasn't in room 312. His denial was vehement, but Poirot noted his unease. The cigar was a thread, but to what? Mary, the maid, was questioned again. She fidgeted, her eyes darting to Blake's office door. "I told you, sir, I was cleaning downstairs," she said. Poirot asked about her access to master keys. "I have a set, but room 312's lock is special. Only Mr. Blake's key fits the bolt." Poirot recalled the blueprints. The service corridor's locked door required Blake's key. Yet the hidden panel in Crane's wardrobe suggested another entry. He tested Mary's story, asking about Crane's rudeness. "He called me useless," she whispered, tears welling. "But I'd never—" Her sincerity was compelling, but Poirot sensed she knew more than she said. Returning to room 312, Poirot examined the window's scratch again. Using a magnifying glass, he confirmed it was superficial, likely from a groundskeeper's tool, not an entry attempt. The midnight note, however, gnawed at him. Its fine paper matched stationery in the hotel's writing room, accessible to all guests. Was it a genuine clue or a plant? The cigar's presence was equally puzzling. The barman confirmed Havana golds were sold to several guests, including Blake and a visiting businessman, Mr. Edward Lyle, who had arrived that morning claiming to be Crane's partner. Poirot filed Lyle's name away for later. A new clue emerged. Crane's missing wallet was found in a lobby vase, emptied of cash but containing a folded note, "Pay or regret." The handwriting was unfamiliar and the paper differed from the midnight note. Blackmail, perhaps. Poirot questioned Lyle, a suave man with a calculating smile. "Crane owed me $50,000, Lyle admitted. "I visited him at 10 p.m. to demand payment, but he laughed me off. I left for my inn afterward." The inn staff confirmed Lyle's alibi, but Poirot noted his calm demeanor, too calm for a man who'd lost a fortune. Hastings, eager to help, suggested, "What if the wallet was tossed to frame someone? Clara, perhaps?" Poirot shook his head. "The wallet is a distraction, Hastings, but not without purpose. The killer wishes us to chase shadows." He re-examined the hidden panel in the wardrobe, finding faint scuff marks on the floor, suggesting recent use. The service corridor beyond was dusty, but a single footprint, small, possibly a woman's, caught his eye. Mary's shoes, Clara's, or another's? Poirot requested a list of guests who'd purchased Havana golds. The barman named Blake, Lyle, and a minor guest, a retired colonel who'd left the hotel before the murder. The colonel was a dead end, but Blake's cigars kept him in focus. Poirot also tested the midnight note's ink under a lamp, noting its fresh sheen, written recently, perhaps that night. He cross-referenced alibis: Clara's ice bucket, Beatrice's brooch, Mortimer's notebook. Blake's cigars and Mary's keys formed a web of half-truths. As evening fell, the Celeste's atmosphere grew heavier. Guests avoided the third floor and staff whispered of a curse. Poirot, undeterred, sat in the parlor, his tisane cooling as he sketched a timeline in his notebook. Crane retired at 11 p.m. The murder occurred around 2:15 a.m., per the stopped watch, and the killer escaped, bolting the door from within. The service corridor offered a path, but the bolt's mechanism baffled him. "The killer is clever," he told Hastings, "but not infallible. The cigar, the note, the wallet, these are breadcrumbs, but some led astray." Hastings, ever optimistic, clapped his hands. "You're closing in, Poirot." "But who's your bet? Beatrice? Clara?" Poirot's eyes twinkled. "I bet on logic, Hastings. The red herrings are many, but the truth is singular. We must separate the false from the true." He closed his notebook, the puzzle's pieces swirling in his mind. The Celeste's secrets were deepening, and Poirot knew the next clue could break the case. Or bury it further. Chapter 5. Complications and Twists. The Celeste Hotel, once a beacon of elegance, now felt like a gilded cage. By the second day of the investigation, the air was thick with suspicion, and the guests' polished facades were cracking. Hercule Poirot stood in the hotel's private parlor, his gray eyes scanning the suspects' faces as they gathered under Inspector Japp's orders. The midnight note, the Havana gold cigar, the missing wallet, and the hidden service corridor had deepened the mystery of Victor Crane's murder in room 312. Captain Hastings, ever eager, whispered, "It's like a chess game, Poirot, and the killer's always one move ahead." Poirot's mustache twitched. "Non, mon ami. The killer believes they are ahead, but Poirot sees the board clearly. We must anticipate their next play." A new complication arose with the arrival of Mr. Edward Lyle, Victor Crane's business partner, who had been staying at a nearby inn. Lyle, a tall man with a slick demeanor and a tailored suit, approached Poirot in the lobby. "Crane owed me 50,000, he said, his voice smooth but edged with frustration. "I confronted him at 10 p.m. the night he died, but I left him alive. Check with the inn. My alibi's solid." Poirot noted Lyle's calm confidence, a stark contrast to the nervous suspects. The inn staff confirmed Lyle returned by 10:30 p.m., but Poirot wondered if his visit had sparked a chain of events. "A man owed such a sum," Poirot murmured to Hastings, "has enemies, even if he claims innocence." The investigation took a startling turn when Japp's men searched Clara Duval's suite and found a second letter opener, identical to the murder weapon, tucked in a drawer. Clara, summoned to explain, clutched her silk robe, her eyes wide with feigned shock. "It's a gift from a fan," she insisted. "I've never used it." Poirot examined the letter opener, noting its pristine blade, unlike the bloodied one in room 312. "Curieux," he said. "Why keep such a gift hidden, mademoiselle?" Clara's lips trembled, but she held his gaze. "I didn't want rumors," she said. "You know how people talk." Poirot's eyes narrowed. Was this another red herring or proof of her involvement? Dr. Harold Mortimer's notebook became another focal point. Poirot, with Japp's permission, examined its pages, confirming the formulas were for a sedative, not poison. Mortimer, his gaunt face twitching, explained, "It's a personal project, Monsieur Poirot. I was developing a sleep aid, nothing more." Poirot pressed, "A sedative could render a man helpless, non? No struggle, no noise." Mortimer paled but insisted he'd never used it on Crane. The formulas, dated weeks earlier, supported his claim, but Poirot noted his nervous grip on the notebook. "The truth, doctor, is in what you do not say," Poirot said softly, filing the sedative's potential role for later. Reginald Blake, the hotel manager, grew more agitated under scrutiny. Poirot confronted him about the Havana gold cigar found in Crane's room. "You smoke this brand, Monsieur Blake," Poirot said, holding up the cigar box from Blake's office. Blake's face reddened. "Yes, but I wasn't in room 312. I met Crane earlier that evening in the lounge to discuss the hotel's sale. I left a cigar there, perhaps." His story was plausible, but his sweating palms suggested fear. Poirot probed further, discovering Blake had forged ledger entries to hide the Celeste's debt from Crane. "I didn't want him to know how desperate we were," Blake admitted, "but murder, never." Poirot's gaze was piercing. Desperation, he knew, could drive men to extremes. Mary, the maid, provided a new twist. In a tearful confession to Poirot, she admitted overhearing Lady Beatrice and Crane arguing in the corridor at 1 a.m., contradicting Beatrice's claim of being asleep. "They were near room 312, Mary whispered. "Lady Beatrice said something about never forgiving him. I didn't tell Mr. Blake. I was afraid." Poirot's mustache twitched. "Afraid of what, mademoiselle?" Mary hesitated. "Of losing my job. Mr. Blake's kind, but he's strict about gossip." Poirot noted her loyalty to Blake. wondering if it masked something deeper. Poirot returned to the service corridor behind room 312's hidden wardrobe panel, now a focal point. The small footprint he'd found, possibly a woman's, matched neither Clara's nor Mary's shoes, adding a new layer of mystery. The corridor's lock required Blake's master key, but Poirot discovered a faint oil mark on the panel's edge, suggesting recent use. Someone knew of this passage, he told Hastings, but how did they bolt the door from inside? He experimented with the bolt, finding it could be manipulated with a thin wire through the keyhole, but the technique required precision. A skilled hand, Poirot murmured, or a practiced one. A sudden incident heightened the tension. As Poirot examined the corridor, a chandelier in the hallway above crashed to the floor, narrowly missing him. Japp, rushing to the scene, declared it an accident, but Poirot's eyes gleamed. An accident, Inspector, or a warning. The chandelier's chain showed signs of tampering, its bolts loosened. Someone, it seemed, wanted Poirot's investigation stalled. Hastings, shaken, exclaimed, "Good Lord, Poirot, you could have been killed." Poirot brushed dust from his sleeve. The killer grows bold, Hastings, but boldness betrays. Poirot cross-referenced alibis against the new evidence. Clara's midnight ice bucket was confirmed by melted water, but her letter opener raised doubts. Beatrice's 1 a.m. argument with Crane, overheard by Mary, contradicted her alibi. Mortimer's sedative could explain Crane's passivity, though his garden walk held. Blake's cigar and forged ledgers pointed to motive, but not means. Lyle's calm alibi was unshaken, yet his timing was convenient. Mary's timid confession hinted at hidden knowledge. The pay or regret note in the wallet, Poirot realized, might link to Lyle's debt, but its handwriting matched no suspects. As night fell, the Celeste's atmosphere grew oppressive. Guests avoided the third floor and staff whispered of ghosts. Poirot, undeterred, sat in the parlor, his tisane cooling as he sketched a diagram of room 312. The service corridor, the wire trick, the chandelier, all pointed to a cunning killer. "The clues are many," he told Hastings, "but the truth is one. The killer weaves a tapestry of deception, but Poirot sees the threads." Hastings, ever hopeful, clapped his shoulder. "You're close, Poirot, I can feel it." Poirot's eyes twinkled. "Close, yes, but the final move eludes us." The investigation was now a race against the killer's next act. Poirot requested a guest list from the night of the murder, suspecting an overlooked figure. He also asked Japp to test the oil mark on the wardrobe panel for fingerprints. "Every detail matters," he said. "The cigar, the note, the footprint. They are pieces of a puzzle, but some are false." As he closed his notebook, the Celeste's walls seemed to pulse with secrets, daring Poirot to uncover them before another strike. Chapter 6. The Revelation. The Celeste Hotel's opulence felt like a fading veneer as the investigation reached its climax. By the third day, the guests were restless, confined to their suites, and the staff moved like shadows, wary of the unseen killer. Hercule Poirot, his suit pristine and his mustache impeccable, gathered the suspects in the hotel's grand ballroom, its chandeliers dim to match the somber mood. Inspector Japp stood by the door, his mustache twitching with anticipation, while Captain Hastings sat in the front row, notebook in hand. "This is it, Poirot," Hastings whispered. "You've got them cornered, haven't you?" Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Cornered, mon ami?" "No. The truth is not a trap. It is a light that reveals all." Poirot began with the locked room puzzle, his voice deliberate and warm, carrying the sophistication of a seasoned storyteller. "Mesdames et messieurs, Victor Crane was murdered in room 312, a room bolted from within, its windows sealed, its key missing. How did the killer enter and escape? This is the question that has haunted us. He paced the polished floor, his hands clasped behind his back. But the answer is simple once the little gray cells align the facts. The bolt was engaged by a clever trick. A thin wire threaded through the keyhole, pulled to lock the door, then removed. The service corridor, hidden behind the wardrobe's panel, provided the exit. The killer needed only skill and opportunity. The suspects shifted uneasily. Lady Beatrice Langley gripped her cane, her eyes like flint. Clara Duval smoothed her dress, her smile tight. Dr. Harold Mortimer clutched his notebook, his face pale. Reginald Blake, the hotel manager, mopped his brow while Mary, the maid, stood at the back, her hands twisting her apron. Mr. Edward Lyle, Crane's business partner, leaned against a pillar, his expression unreadable. Poirot's gaze swept over them, missing nothing. He turned to the clues. The midnight note found under the bed was a plant meant to mislead. Its fresh ink and fine paper from the hotel's writing room pointed to a deliberate act. Mademoiselle Duval, you were seen near room 312 at midnight claiming to fetch ice. But the note was yours, non? Clara's eyes widened. I wrote it as a rehearsal prop, she stammered. Crane propositioned me and I met him to refuse him. I tore the note and left it by mistake. Poirot nodded. A half-truth, mademoiselle. You were there, but not for murder. Your presence was a distraction. Next, Poirot addressed the Havana Gold cigar. Monsieur Blake, you smoke this brand, and one was found in Crane's room, though he did not smoke. Blake flushed. I met Crane in the lounge at 10:30 p.m. discussing the hotel's sale. I left a cigar there, but I swear I wasn't in room 312. Poirot raised a hand. You speak the truth, monsieur. The cigar was moved to room 312 by another to cast suspicion on you. Blake exhaled, but his relief was short-lived as Poirot's gaze lingered. The diamond brooch found in the garden was next. Madame Langley, you claimed it was stolen, yet it was placed near Dr. Mortimer's walking path. A clever attempt to frame him, no? Beatrice's lips thinned. I told you it was stolen. I had no part in this. Poirot's eyes twinkled. Indeed, madam. The brooch was a red herring, dropped by the killer to muddy the waters. Mortimer shifted, his fingers tightening on his notebook, but Poirot moved on. The missing wallet found in the lobby vase with the note "Pay or Regret" pointed to blackmail. Poirot turned to Lyle. Monsieur Lyle, Crane owed you 50,000. Your visit at 10 p.m. was confirmed, but your calm suggests control. Did you write the note? Lyle's smile was cool. I'm a businessman, Monsieur Poirot. I don't resort to petty threats. Poirot nodded. The note was not yours, but it served the killer's purpose, to suggest a financial motive. Poirot's voice grew grave. The true killer is among us, and their motive is not mere money or rejection. It is survival. He turned to Dr. Harold Mortimer, whose face drained of color. Doctor, your notebook contains formulas for a sedative capable of rendering a man helpless. Crane was stabbed without struggle, suggesting such a drug. You walked in the garden, but not for insomnia. You used the service corridor, access through the hidden panel, to enter room 312. You drugged Crane, stabbed him with the letter opener, and used the wire trick to bolt the door before escaping. Mortimer's voice cracked. Preposterous. I was in the garden. Poirot raised a hand. Your alibi is weak, Doctor. The footprint in the corridor, small but not a woman's, matches your narrow shoes. The oil mark on the wardrobe panel bears your fingerprints, missed by the police. And your motive? Crane threatened to expose a falsified medical license, a secret that would ruin you. Not content with blackmail, he funded a rival doctor's research, threatening your career entirely. You acted to protect your future. The ballroom was silent, the suspects frozen. Mortimer's hands shook, his notebook slipping to the floor. He'd have destroyed me, he whispered. Years of work, gone. I had no choice. Poirot's voice softened, but his eyes were unyielding. You chose murder, Doctor. You wiped the letter opener, planted the cigar to implicate Blake, and dropped the brooch to frame Madame Langley. The midnight note, though Clara's served your chaos, but the little gray cells see through deception. Japp stepped forward, handcuffs ready. Well done, Poirot. You've got him. Mortimer slumped, his confession spilling like a dam breaking. Crane laughed at me, said I'd be a pauper. I slipped the sedative into his tea at 11 p.m., entered through the corridor, and did what I had to. The room exhaled as Japp led him away, the suspect's faces a mix of shock and relief. Poirot addressed the others. Each of you had reason to hate Monsieur Crane, but only one acted. Mademoiselle Duval, your deception was foolish but not fatal. Madame Langley, your anger was justified but not criminal. Monsieur Blake, your ambition clouded your judgment, but you are innocent. Monsieur Lyle, your loss was great, but your hands are clean. He turned to Mary, who wept quietly. Mademoiselle, your silence protected no one but the killer. Speak truth next time. Hastings clapped slowly, his eyes wide. Brilliant, Poirot. That wire trick. How did you know? Poirot smiled. The bolt's mechanism, Hastings, required a simple but precise tool. Only a man of science like Mortimer could execute it. The rest was human nature, fear, desperation, and a need to hide. He adjusted his bow tie, the case resolved, but the weight of truth lingering. As the suspects dispersed, the Celeste's ballroom felt lighter, its shadows retreating. Poirot lingered, his mind already turning to the next challenge. The human heart, he told Hastings, is the greatest puzzle of all, but Poirot sees what others miss. The hotel, though scarred, would endure, its secrets laid bare by the little gray cells. Chapter 7. Justice Served. The Celeste Hotel's grand ballroom, once a stage for Poirot's dramatic revelation, now stood quiet, its chandeliers casting a soft glow over the polished floor. The suspects, no longer under suspicion, lingered in the aftermath of Dr. Harold Mortimer's confession. Inspector Japp had led Mortimer away in handcuffs, his gaunt face crumpled with defeat. The air, heavy with tension for days, seemed to lighten. But Hercule Poirot remained vigilant, his gray eyes scanning the room. Captain Hastings, ever loyal, stood beside him, scribbling final notes. Well, Poirot, you've done it again, Hastings said, his voice bright with admiration. Cracked an impossible case. Poirot's mustache twitched. Impossible, mon ami? No. The little gray cells make all things possible. As the police cleared the ballroom, Poirot gathered the remaining players, Lady Beatrice Langley, Clara Duval, Reginald Blake, Mary the maid, and Mr. Edward Lyle, in the hotel's private parlor for a final reckoning. The Celeste, though scarred by murder, deserved closure, and Poirot intended to provide it. He stood by the fireplace, its embers glowing, and addressed them with his characteristic blend of sophistication and warmth. Mesdames et messieurs, the crime is solved, but justice is more than an arrest. It is understanding why this tragedy unfolded and how we move forward. Lady Beatrice, her cane tapping rhythmically, spoke first. Monsieur Poirot, you've spared us further scandal, but the Celeste's reputation is tarnished. What now? Her voice, usually sharp, held a note of vulnerability. Poirot nodded. Madam, your strength has carried this hotel through darker times. Victor Crane's greed wounded you, but you did not break. I propose a gesture. Fund the Celeste's restoration not for profit, but to honor your late husband's legacy. Beatrice's eyes softened, a rare crack in her armor. For Henry, she said quietly. I'll consider it. Poirot noted her resolve, sensing the hotel might yet reclaim its glory under her patronage. Clara Duval, her auburn hair catching the firelight, fidgeted with her handkerchief. "I lied about the midnight note," she admitted, her voice low. "I was afraid it made me look guilty. I'm sorry, Monsieur Poirot." Poirot's gaze was gentle but firm. "Mademoiselle, deception is a dangerous game, but your heart was not in murder. Use your talents for truth, not masks." Clara nodded, her eyes glistening. "I'll try," she whispered. Poirot sensed her sincerity, though her flair for drama would likely persist. He advised her to leave the Celeste, to seek roles that matched her spirit without Crane's shadow. Reginald Blake, the young manager, sat hunched, his boyish charm dimmed by the ordeal. "I forged the ledgers to save the hotel," he said, his voice breaking. "Crane's pressure was unbearable, but I didn't kill him." Poirot placed a hand on his shoulder. "Monsieur Blake, your ambition is your strength, but honesty is your shield. The Havana Gold cigar in Crane's room was a cruel plant, but your truth has cleared you. Work with Madame Langley. Rebuild the Celeste with integrity." Blake nodded, a spark of hope returning to his eyes. Poirot knew the young man's future depended on learning from this crisis. Mary, the maid, stood at the back, her apron crumpled from nervous twisting. "I should have told you about Lady Beatrice's argument with Mr. Crane sooner," she said, tears streaking her face. "I was scared of Mr. Blake dismissing me." Poirot's voice was kind. "Mademoiselle Mary, fear silenced you, but courage brought you forward. You are the heart of this hotel. Your work keeps it alive. Speak freely henceforth." Mary managed a small smile, and Poirot sensed her loyalty would strengthen the Celeste's spirit. Mr. Edward Lyle, Crane's business partner, leaned against the parlor wall, his composure unshaken. "I lost 50,000, Monsieur Poirot, but I bear no grudge. Justice is served." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Monsieur Lyle, your calm is admirable, but your visit to Crane at 10 p.m. set events in motion. The pay or regret note was not yours, but it fueled Mortimer's desperation. Be mindful. Your ambition, like Crane's, treads a dangerous path." Lyle's smile faltered, but he nodded, retreating into silence. Poirot suspected Lyle's role was peripheral, but his presence had been a catalyst. With the suspects addressed, Poirot turned to the mechanics of the crime, ensuring every detail was clear. "Dr. Mortimer's motive was survival," he explained. Crane's blackmail over a falsified medical license, combined with his funding of a rival doctor, pushed Mortimer to desperation. He slipped a sedative, crafted from his notebook's formulas, into Crane's tea at 11 p.m., served by Mary. At 2 a.m., he entered through the service corridor's hidden panel, stabbed Crane with the letter opener, and used a wire through the keyhole to bolt the door. The cigar, taken from Blake's lounge meeting, was placed to implicate him. The brooch, stolen from Madame Langley, was dropped to frame her. The midnight note, though Clara's, served Mortimer's chaos. Hastings, wide-eyed, interrupted. "But the chandelier, Poirot. Was that Mortimer too?" Poirot nodded. "Oui, Hastings. The loosened bolts were his warning to me. A desperate act as I closed in. His fingerprints on the wardrobe panel and the corridor's oil mark betrayed him. The footprint, matching his narrow shoes, sealed his fate." Jap, who had rejoined them, grunted. "I missed those prints, Poirot. You're a marvel." Poirot smiled modestly. "The little gray cells, Inspector, see what haste overlooks." As the parlor meeting concluded, the suspects dispersed, each carrying the weight of their truths. Lady Beatrice met with Blake to discuss funding, their conversation pragmatic but hopeful. Clara packed her bags, vowing to audition for a new play in Paris. Mary returned to her duties, her head held higher. Lyle left for his inn, his business unresolved, but his name cleared. The Celeste, though shaken, began to breathe again, its staff resuming their tasks with cautious optimism. Poirot and Hastings retired to the hotel's tea room, where Poirot sipped a tisane, his mind still turning over the case. "The human heart, Hastings," he said, "is a labyrinth of motives. Greed, fear, pride. Mortimer's crime was not just murder, but a betrayal of trust. Yet in solving it, we restore order." Hastings grinned. "You make it sound poetic, Poirot. But I say, what about another getaway? Somewhere without murder?" Poirot chuckled, his eyes twinkling. "Mon ami, where Poirot goes, mystery follows. But perhaps a quiet café, non?" As they prepared to leave the Celeste, Poirot paused in the lobby, glancing at the grand staircase where he'd first observed the suspects. The hotel's elegance, once overshadowed by death, now seemed to shimmer anew. He adjusted his bow tie, satisfied. "The Celeste will endure," he told Hastings. "Its secrets are revealed, its justice served." With a final nod to the staff, Poirot stepped into the London dusk, ready for the next challenge his little gray cells would face. The police finalized Mortimer's arrest, his trial set to expose Crane's blackmail schemes to the public. Japp, though grumbling about paperwork, sent Poirot a bottle of crème de menthe as thanks. The Celeste's guests, freed from suspicion, began to depart, their whispers now of Poirot's brilliance rather than scandal. The hotel, under Blake's renewed leadership and Beatrice's support, planned renovations, a symbol of resilience. Poirot, ever reflective, jotted a final note in his journal. "The locked room is not just a door. It is the mind, locked by fear. To open it, one needs only logic and courage." He closed the book, his work complete, and looked to the horizon where new mysteries awaited. Chapter 8. Shadows of Truth. The Celeste Hotel, though freed from the immediate grip of murder, retained an air of unease. The grand ballroom, where Poirot had revealed Dr. Mortimer's guilt, now stood empty, its chandeliers dimmed as if mourning the scandal. Hercule Poirot, his suit as pristine as ever, stood in the hotel's private parlor, sipping a tisane and reviewing his notebook. Captain Hastings, ever the optimist, lounged nearby, flipping through a newspaper. "It's over, Poirot," Hastings said, grinning. "Mortimer's locked up and the Celeste can breathe again." "Jolly good show." Poirot's mustache twitched, his gray eyes narrowing. "Over, mon ami?" "Perhaps. But the truth, like a fine wine, reveals new notes with time." As the hotel prepared to resume normalcy, a new complication surfaced. A porter, Thomas, approached Poirot in the lobby, his cap twisted nervously in his hands. "Monsieur Poirot, sir, there's something odd. I found this in the service corridor behind room 312. He produced a small brass key, its edges worn but distinct. Poirot's eyes gleamed. "Curieux? This is not the master key, nor room 312's bolt key. Where does it lead?" Thomas shrugged. "Dunno, sir. It's old, from when the Celeste was a manor." Poirot tucked the key into his pocket, sensing a loose thread in his carefully woven solution. Poirot returned to the service corridor where the hidden wardrobe panel had been Mortimer's escape route. The corridor, dusty and narrow, held no obvious lock for the brass key. But near the panel, Poirot noticed a faint outline in the wall, a concealed door, its edges camouflaged by faded wallpaper. The key fit perfectly, unlocking a small storage closet filled with old ledgers, household records, and a locked wooden box. "Mon Dieu," Poirot murmured. "The Celeste keeps its secrets close." He requested Japp's assistance to open the box, suspecting it held answers to questions he hadn't yet asked. While awaiting Japp, Poirot revisited the suspects, probing for overlooked details. Lady Beatrice Langley, now softened by her pledge to fund the hotel's restoration, met him in the tea room. "Monsieur Poirot, your brilliance saved us," she said, her cane resting beside her. "But I sense you're not satisfied." Poirot tilted his head. "Madame, a crime leaves echoes. Did you know of a hidden closet in the service corridor?" Beatrice frowned. When this was my husband's manor, there were many such nooks. I sold the estate after his ruin, Crane's doing. I never explored them. Her candor rang true, but Poirot noted her lingering bitterness toward Crane. Clara Duval, packing for her departure to Paris, was less forthcoming. "I've told you everything," she said, her auburn hair catching the light as she folded a silk dress. The midnight note was a mistake, nothing more. Poirot pressed gently. "And the service corridor, mademoiselle. Did you know of it?" Clara's eyes flickered. "I heard rumors from the staff. Old houses have secrets, don't they?" Her evasiveness piqued Poirot's curiosity, but her role seemed peripheral. He let her go, her suitcase a symbol of escape from the Celeste's shadow. Reginald Blake, overseeing staff in the lobby, was flustered when Poirot questioned him about the key. "I've never seen it," he insisted. "The service corridor was locked, and only my master key opens it." Poirot showed him the brass key. "This, monsieur, suggests otherwise. What lies in the closet?" Blake paled, his ambition clouded by fear. "I swear I don't know. The hotel's debts kept me too busy to poke around." Poirot believed his ignorance, but noted his nervous glance toward the third floor. Was Blake hiding more than ledgers? Mary, the maid, trembled when shown the key. "I clean the corridors, sir, but I never saw that door," she said. "Mr. Crane. He asked about old passages once, said they'd add character to his hotel deal." Poirot's mustache twitched. "Did he, mademoiselle? And what did you tell him?" Mary blushed. "Nothing, sir. I didn't know anything to tell." Her timidity felt genuine, but Poirot wondered if Crane's curiosity had provoked Mortimer further. Mr. Edward Lyle, Crane's business partner, was the last to be questioned. He met Poirot in the lounge, his calm unshaken. "A key, you say? Intriguing, but I'm a businessman, not a treasure hunter." Poirot probed. "Monsieur Crane sought hidden passages. Did he share such plans with you?" Lyle shrugged. "He mentioned the hotel's history might boost its value. I didn't care. My 50,000 was my concern." Poirot noted Lyle's detachment, suspecting he knew more than he admitted but lacked a direct link to the closet. Jap arrived, and together they opened the wooden box from the closet. Inside were letters, yellowed with age, and a journal bearing the Langley family crest. The letters, written by Beatrice's late husband Henry, detailed Crane's swindle in the mining venture, a deliberate fraud that bankrupted the Langleys. The journal, however, was more revealing. It described a secret trust fund Henry had hidden in the manor, meant to protect Beatrice if his ventures failed. "Mon Dieu," Poirot said. "Crane knew of this fund, perhaps, and sought it." The journal hinted the fund's documents were stored elsewhere in the hotel, but no location was specified. Poirot theorized Crane's interest in the Celeste wasn't just business. He was hunting the trust fund, a motive that fueled Mortimer's desperation. Mortimer learned of Crane's plan, Poirot told Jap. The blackmail over his license was compounded by Crane's threat to seize the fund, ruining Mortimer's rival research. Jap scratched his head. So Mortimer killed him to stop it? But what's this key got to do with it? Poirot's eyes gleamed. The key unlocks the past, Inspector. It confirms Mortimer's access to the corridor, and perhaps Crane's own search. To test this, Poirot interviewed Mortimer in his cell, under Jap's supervision. Mortimer, his gaunt face haggard, admitted, "Crane boasted about finding a hidden treasure in the Celeste. He'd ruin me and take everything. I found the closet key in the library, used it to plan the murder." Poirot nodded. "And the chandelier? Your warning to me?" Mortimer's eyes dropped. "I panicked. You were too close." His confession tied the key to the crime, but the trust fund remained elusive. Poirot returned to the Celeste, searching the library where Mortimer found the key. Behind a loose panel, he discovered a safe, but its lock didn't match the brass key. "Another puzzle?" Poirot murmured. He advised Beatrice to hire a solicitor to trace the trust fund, ensuring it benefited the hotel's revival. "The Celeste's heart beats still," he told her. "Let this fund heal its wounds." As Poirot prepared to leave, he addressed the staff, urging unity. "The Celeste is your home," he said. "Protect it as Mary does with her quiet strength." Mary blushed, and Blake vowed to manage with honesty. Clara left for Paris, Lyle for his next deal, and Beatrice began planning renovations. The hotel, though scarred, stood resilient. Poirot and Hastings strolled into the London dusk, the Celeste's lights fading behind them. "A tidy end, Poirot," Hastings said. "But that trust fund, will it be found?" Poirot smiled. "Some mysteries linger, Hastings, but justice is served and the Celeste endures." He adjusted his bow tie, ready for the next case. Chapter 9. The Hidden Legacy. The Celeste Hotel's timeless elegance masked a labyrinth of secrets, and the discovery of the brass key had reignited Hercule Poirot's insatiable curiosity. Though Dr. Harold, Mortimer's confession had resolved Victor Crane's locked room murder, the hidden closet and its revelations, a cache of incriminating letters in Henry Langley's journal, hinted at deeper intrigue. Poirot, his gray eyes sharp as ever, stood in the hotel library, the very room where Mortimer claimed to have found the key. Captain Hastings paced nearby, his enthusiasm undimmed. "A secret trust fund, Poirot, hidden somewhere in this very hotel. It's like a treasure hunt." Poirot's mustache twitched with mild exasperation. "A treasure hunt, mon ami. Non. This is a puzzle of human greed and desperation waiting to be solved." The journal's cryptic entry burned in Poirot's mind. "The legacy rests where light meets shadow, guarded by Langley's gaze." Henry Langley, Beatrice's late husband, had concealed a fortune to protect his wife from ruin after Crane's mining swindle. The brass key opened the closet, but the true vault remained elusive. Poirot examined the library's ornate ceiling, where a portrait of Henry Langley loomed, his stern eyes seeming to follow every movement. "Guarded by Langley's gaze," Poirot murmured. "Perhaps literally, non." Lady Beatrice Langley joined them, her cane tapping authoritatively. "Monsieur Poirot, you've stirred ghosts I thought long buried," she said, her voice laced with unease. Henry was secretive about his affairs, especially after Crane's betrayal. "If there's a trust fund, it's rightfully mine." Poirot inclined his head. "Madam, your claim is just, but the killer may have sought it too." Mortimer's motive deepened. Crane's knowledge of the fund amplified his blackmail. Beatrice's eyes narrowed. "Then find it, monsieur. The Celeste needs every penny for its revival." Poirot's search began methodically. He tapped the library walls, listening for hollow echoes, and examined the portrait. Behind the frame, a small lever protruded, disguised as a nail. With a click, a panel slid open, revealing a narrow staircase descending into darkness. "Voilà!" Poirot exclaimed. "Light meets shadow here where the window's glow touches the portrait's edge." Hastings lit a lantern, and they descended into a dusty basement chamber, its air thick with the scent of aged paper and damp stone. The chamber held a heavy iron safe, its door engraved with the Langley crest. The brass key fit the lock perfectly, and inside lay stacks of bearer bonds, gold certificates, and a sealed envelope addressed to Beatrice. The total value exceeded $100,000, a fortune in 1920s terms. "Blimey, Poirot," Hastings gasped. "Enough to save the Celeste 10 times over." Poirot's expression remained grave. "Oui. But why hide it so elaborately? And did Crane know its precise location?" A folded letter within the safe provided answers. Henry wrote, "Beatrice, if you read this, Crane's greed has prevailed. This legacy is yours alone. Use it to reclaim." Our home. Trust no one, especially not Victor Crane, who suspects its existence but not its guardian. Poirot pieced it together. Crane had pressured Reginald Blake to sell the hotel not just for profit, but to unearth the fund during renovations. Mortimer, aware through his medical visits to the Langley estate, saw Crane's plan as a double threat, exposing his falsified license while seizing funds that could rival Mortimer's research backers. Reginald Blake, summoned to the library, blanched at the safe's contents. Mr. Crane mentioned hidden value in the Celeste, he admitted, his voice trembling. He wanted to gut the place for redevelopment. I resisted, but the debts... Poirot's gaze was piercing. And the service corridor, monsieur? Did Crane explore it? Blake nodded reluctantly. Once, with a map, he found the closet but not the safe, said it was child's play to crack. Poirot noted Blake's relief at the fund's discovery. His forged ledgers could now be rectified. Mary, the maid, was questioned next. Her knowledge of the hotel's nooks proved invaluable. Mr. Langley had a study here before it was the library, she said softly. He'd lock himself away, muttering about thieves like Crane. I dusted the portrait weekly, never dreamed of a lever. Poirot smiled. Your loyalty, mademoiselle, is the Celeste's true treasure. This fund will secure your future here. Mary's eyes welled with tears, her timid facade cracking into quiet pride. Clara Duval, lingering before her Paris departure, offered an unexpected insight. Victor bragged about a big score at the Celeste, she said, packing her trunks. He thought it was buried gold or jewels. I laughed it off. Men like him chase shadows. Poirot probed. And your midnight note, mademoiselle? Was it truly innocent? Clara sighed. Partly. I met him to refuse his film funding, but he ranted about the hotel's secrets. I left the note as a prop, never imagined it'd fuel murder. Her candor cleared lingering doubts, though Poirot sensed her flair for drama remained a wild card. Mr. Edward Lyle, Crane's partner, arrived unannounced, drawn by rumors. If there's a fund, it's mine by partnership, he claimed smoothly. Poirot's eyes twinkled. Monsieur, the safe's contents are Langley's legacy, not Crane's plunder. Your $50,000 debt is noted, but justice favors the wronged. Lyle's composure slipped. Crane promised me a share. Poirot revealed the letter's accusations, forcing Lyle to retreat, his ambitions checked. Beatrice, presented with the envelope, read Henry's final words in private. Emerging teary-eyed, she declared, This honors him and saves the Celeste. Renovations begin tomorrow with fair wages for all staff. Blake beamed, sketching plans on the spot. The hotel buzzed with renewed energy, porters polishing fixtures and maids fluffing pillows, with purpose. Yet Poirot sensed one final shadow. He revisited Mortimer's cell where the doctor sat despondent. The fun, doctor, you knew of it? Poirot asked. Mortimer nodded wearily. Crane confided during blackmail sessions he'd ruin me, then claim the legacy. I acted to stop him for my research, yes, but also to protect what Henry built. Poirot's voice was stern. Murder protects nothing, doctor. Your science twisted into sin. Mortimer hung his head, his confession complete. Inspector Japp, overseeing the fund's transfer to Beatrice's solicitor, grumbled appreciatively. You've turned a murder into a windfall, Poirot. The Celeste'll be grander than ever. Poirot adjusted his bow tie. Justice, Inspector, restores what crime destroys. The little gray cells ensure balance. As evening fell, Poirot and Hastings dined in the revitalized tea room, the safe's legacy funding crystal glassware and fresh linens. A happy ending, Poirot, Hastings toasted. Poirot sipped his tisane thoughtfully. Happy, mon ami? The Celeste rises, yes, but human frailty lingers. Greed birthed this tale. Let wisdom end it. Beatrice joined them briefly, toasting Poirot. To the man who saw through shadows. He bowed modestly. The chapter closed with the Celeste aglow, its secrets unearthed, and its future secured. Poirot stepped into the night, notebook filled, ready for new enigmas. The legacy, once hidden, now illuminated the hotel's path forward. Chapter 10. The Celeste Restored. The Celeste Hotel stood radiant under the late afternoon sun, its white stone facade gleaming as if cleansed by the resolution of Victor Crane's murder. The scandal that had threatened its legacy was fading, replaced by whispers of renewal. Hercule Poirot, his suit impeccable and his mustache perfectly groomed, stood in the lobby, observing the flurry of activity. Porters polished brass fixtures, maids fluffed velvet cushions, and the string quartet tuned their instruments for the evening's guests. Captain Hastings, ever cheerful, clapped Poirot's shoulder. "You've done it, old chap. The Celeste is back on its feet thanks to you." Poirot's gray eyes twinkled. "Not I, mon ami. The little gray cells merely illuminate what the heart of the Celeste, its people, achieves." The discovery of Henry Langley's trust fund, hidden in a secret safe beneath the library's portrait, had transformed the hotel's fate. Lady Beatrice Langley, now its benefactor, moved through the lobby with renewed purpose, her cane tapping a rhythm of determination. She had pledged the $100,000 fortune to restore the Celeste, honoring her late husband's legacy. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, pausing beside him, "you've given me more than justice. You've given me Henry's dream." Poirot bowed slightly. "Madame, a dream preserved is a victory over greed. The Celeste will shine again." The hotel's revival was underway. Reginald Blake, the young manager, stood at the front desk, overseeing plans for renovations. The forged ledgers that had once hidden the Celeste's debts were replaced with transparent accounts, funded by Beatrice's generosity. Blake approached Poirot, his boyish face alight with gratitude. "I've learned my lesson, monsieur. No more secrets. We're adding new suites and a garden cafe, open to all, not just the elite." Poirot nodded approvingly. "Ambition with honesty, Monsieur Blake, is a foundation that endures. The Celeste is in capable hands." Mary, the maid, moved quietly through the lobby, her timid demeanor softened by newfound confidence. Poirot caught her eye, offering a gentle smile. "Mademoiselle Mary, your silence nearly shielded a killer, but your courage helped unveil the truth. You are the Celeste's quiet strength." Mary blushed, her apron smoothed with pride. "I'll keep it spotless, sir, and speak up if I must." Poirot's mustache twitched with satisfaction. Her loyalty, once a vulnerability, was now a pillar of the hotel's spirit. Clara Duval, the French actress, had departed for Paris, but not before sending Poirot a letter, delivered by a porter. "Monsieur Poirot," it read, "your clarity showed me my own shadows. I seek roles that honor truth, not deception. Merci." Poirot folded the letter, reflecting on her flair for drama. "She will dazzle Paris," he told Hastings, "but only if she learns to shine without masks." Hastings chuckled. "You're a soft touch under that stern exterior, Poirot." Poirot's eyes sparkled, but he said nothing, letting the compliment pass. Mr. Edward Lyle, Crane's business partner, had left London, his claim to the trust fund rebuffed. Poirot had ensured the solicitor's documents protected Beatrice's rights, leaving Lyle to pursue his $50,000 through legal channels. "A man like Lyle," Poirot mused to Hastings, "chases wealth but not wisdom. His path will be his own undoing." Hastings nodded, flipping through his notebook. "Crane's greed started this mess, didn't it? Poor Mortimer got caught in it." Poirot's expression grew solemn. "Oui, Hastings. Greed is a poison, but desperation is its blade." Poirot visited Dr. Mortimer one final time in his cell. seeking to close the case's lingering questions. Mortimer, his gaunt face etched with regret, sat hunched, his notebook confiscated as evidence. "Monsieur Poirot," he said, his voice hollow, "I thought killing Crane would save my work, my life. But I lost both." Poirot's voice was firm but not unkind. "Docteur, you chose a path where science became sin. The sedative, the wire trick, the planted clues. Your mind was brilliant, but your heart was weak." Mortimer nodded, tears falling. "I see that now. Tell the Celeste I'm sorry." Poirot left, knowing justice was served, though redemption was Mortimer's to seek. Inspector Japp, finalizing reports at the hotel, joined Poirot for a cup of tea in the tea room, now adorned with fresh linens funded by the trust. "You've outdone yourself, Poirot," Japp said, his mustache twitching with grudging admiration. "That wire trick, the hidden safe, I'd have missed it all." Poirot sipped his tisane. "The little gray cells, Inspector, see what haste obscures. The Celeste's secrets were many, but logic reveals all." Japp chuckled, raising his cup. "To your gray cells, then, and to a quieter London." Poirot smiled, though he knew quiet was fleeting where mysteries abounded. The hotel's guests, freed from suspicion, began returning, drawn by rumors of its revival. A society columnist dining in the restored dining room penned a glowing review. "The Celeste, once marred by scandal, rises like a phoenix thanks to Lady Beatrice's generosity and a certain Belgian detective's genius." Poirot read the clipping with mild amusement, handing it to Hastings. "They exaggerate, mon ami, but the truth is simple. The Celeste endures because its people do." As evening fell, Poirot and Hastings took a final stroll through the hotel's gardens where roses bloomed despite the autumn chill. The chandelier incident, Mortimer's desperate warning, was now a repaired fixture gleaming above the lobby. "What a case," Hastings said, his breath misting in the air. "Locked rooms, hidden safes, secret funds. You never falter, Poirot." Poirot adjusted his bow tie, his voice warm but reflective. "The human heart, Hastings, is the true locked room. Greed, fear, loyalty, they shape every crime. But order, logic, and truth, they restore balance." Beatrice hosted a small gathering to mark the Celeste's new chapter, inviting Poirot as the guest of honor. Over champagne, she toasted him. "To Hercule Poirot, who saw through shadows and gave us light." The staff clapped, Mary beaming, Blake nodding with resolve. Poirot raised his glass modestly. "To the Celeste, madame, and to those who guard its heart." The room echoed with agreement, the hotel's spirit reborn. As Poirot prepared to leave, he paused at the grand staircase where he'd first observed the suspect's tangled motives. The portrait of Henry Langley, now cleaned and repositioned, seemed to watch approvingly. "The past is settled," Poirot murmured, "and the future begins." He handed Blake a card with his contact details. "Should mysteries arise, monsieur, you know where to find me." Blake grinned. "Let's hope it's just for tea next time." In the London dusk, Poirot and Hastings boarded a cab, the Celeste's lights fading behind them. "Where to next, Poirot?" Hastings asked, his eyes bright with anticipation. Poirot's smile was enigmatic. "Wherever the little gray cells are needed, mon ami. But first, a quiet evening, perhaps with a good book." Hastings laughed, knowing quiet evenings rarely lasted for Hercule Poirot. The Celeste Hotel, its legacy secured, stood as a testament to resilience. Its walls, once hiding secrets, now echoed with hope. Poirot closed his notebook, the case complete, and looked to the horizon where new puzzles awaited his unmatched intellect.